I'd like to really just explore for a little bit the subject of um, God going before His workmen, God being in front, working before the workers ever get to a place. Um, and I'm going to start off just with a couple pages from the book Bruchko. Bruchko is I believe it's an autobiography of a missionary who worked with the Motalone Indian people in South America, and he writes a book about his experiences and sharing the gospel with an untouched tribe who were very hostile to most people, but he managed to bring the gospel to these people. However, we'll see through just a couple of these pages that maybe God was working before he ever got there. So I'm just going to start reading, and I won't read too quickly because I want you guys to follow along. But just to set where I'm going to speak about, he's already in the tribe. He's accepted in the tribe, but he's asking God, how can I share the gospel with these people? And this part of the book, he comes across with some of his tribal friends. He comes across the mourning of a death in the tribe. Somebody is wailing because they have lost somebody unexpectedly, and there is a grieving. They're grieving, and thankfully, Bruchko is able to be in this moment and share the gospel, and we'll see how he does it, which is pretty amazing. So I'll just start reading. The man stopped shouting into the hole and came over to us. His hair was disheveled, his body covered with dirt, his eyes were holes into black space. "It's no point," he said. "We've been deceived." "How long have you been here?" I asked quietly. "Since the sun came up this morning." "And why do you say that you've been deceived?" He told me again the story of the false prophet the Motalones had followed, whose false promises had led them away from God. "We no longer know God," he said quietly. Then the other men tried to explain a Motalone legend that confirmed why his brother's death had such terrifying implications. I didn't understand it at all. Motalone legends are as complicated as theology. But I did understand something new, their great sense of lostness. I had wondered again and again what Christ had to offer them. Their way of getting along with each other was far superior to that of Americans, but there was more to life than that. And here, were the Motalones in search for God. But how could I explain things like grace, sacrifice, the incarnation? I could tell a simple story and they would understand, but how could I communicate real spiritual truth? A lively discussion started. The man who had been in the trees came down and joined us. He reminded us of the legend about the prophet who would come carrying a banana stalks, and that God would come out of those stalks. I couldn't quite understand the idea behind the legend. Why look for God to come out of a banana stalk? I asked. There was puzzled silence. It made sense to them, but they couldn't explain it. Bobby, the friend of Bruchko, walked over to a banana tree which was growing nearby. He cut off a section and tossed it towards us. "This is the kind of banana stalk God can come from," he said. It was a cross section from the stalk. It rolled at our feet. One of the Motalones reached down and swatted at it with his machete, accidentally splitting it in half. One half stood up, while the other half split off. Leaves that were still inside the stalk, waiting to develop and come out, started peeling off, and they lay at the base of the stalk. They looked like pages from a book. Suddenly, a word raced through my mind. Book. Book. I grabbed up my pack and took out my Bible. I opened it, flipping through the pages. I held it towards the men. I pointed to the leaves from the banana stalk, then back to my Bible. "This is it," I said. "I have it here. This is God's banana stalk." One of the Motalones, the one who had been in the tree, grabbed the Bible out of my hand. He started to rip out pages and stuff them in his mouth. He thought if he ate the pages, he would have God inside him. When nothing happened, they began to ask me questions. How could I explain the gospel to them? How could I explain that God in Jesus had been like them? Suddenly, I remembered one of their legends about a man who had become an ant. He had been sitting on the trail after a hunt and had noticed some ants trying to build a home. He wanted to help them make a good home, like the Motalone home. So he'd begun digging in the dirt. But because he was so big and so unknown, the ants had been afraid and had run away. Then, quite miraculously, he had become an ant. He thought like an ant, looked like an ant, and spoke the language of an ant. He lived with the ants, and they came to trust him. He told them one day that he was not really an ant, but a Motalone, and that he had tried once to help them improve their home, but he had scared them away. The ants said their equivalent of, "No kidding. That was you?" And they laughed at him because he didn't look like the huge and fearful thing that had moved the dirt before. But at that moment, he was turned back into a Motalone and began to move the dirt into the shape of a Motalone home. This time, the ants recognized him and let him do his work because they knew he wouldn't harm them. That was why, according to the story, the ants had hills that looked like Motalone homes. As the story flashed into my mind, I realized its lesson for the first time. If you are big and powerful, you have to become small and weak in order to work with other weak beings. It was perfect parallel for what God had done in Jesus. But there was so many unknown factors in the way the Motalones reasoned. How could I be sure that I would convey the right thing? I couldn't, yet I felt sure God had given me this time to speak. So I took the word for becoming like an ant and used it for the incarnation. God is incarnated into man, I said. They gasped. There was a tense, hushed silence. The idea that God had become a man stunned them. "Where did he walk?" the witch doctor asked in a whisper. "Every Motalone has his own trail. It is his personal point of identity. You walk on someone's trail if you want to find him. God would have a trail too. If you want to find God, you walk on his trail." My blood was racing, my heart pounding. Jesus Christ is God become man, I said, and he can show you God's trail. A look of astonishment, almost of fear, spread over their faces. The man who had been shouting into the hole looked at me. "Show us Christ," he said in a coarse whisper. I fumbled for an answer. "You killed Christ," I said. "You destroyed God." His eyes got big. "I killed Christ? I did that? How did I do that? And how can God be killed?" I wanted to tell them that Jesus' death had freed them from meaninglessness, from death and the powers of evil. How do evil, death, deception find power over the Motalone people, I asked. "Through the ears," Bobby answered, "because language is so important to the Motalones. It is the essence of life. If evil language comes through ears, it means death." "Do you remember," I said, "how after a hunt for wild boars, the leader cuts the skin from the animal and puts it over his head to cover his ears and keep the evil spirits out of the jungle?" They nodded, listening closely. "Jesus Christ was murdered," I said, "but just as you pull the skin over the chieftain's head to hide his ears, so Jesus, when he died, pulled his blood over your deception and hides it from the sight of God." I stood looking at them, hoping desperately that they would understand. Then I saw their faces that they did. I told them Jesus was buried. A wave of grief swept over them. The man who was searching for his brother's language began to weep. It was for the first time I had ever seen a Motalone cry, but thought that God was dead, that they were lost, brought tears and sobs. I picked up my Bible and opened it and said, "The Bible speaks that Jesus came alive after death and is alive today." One of the men grabbed the Bible from my hand and put it to his ear. I can't hear a thing, he said. I took it back. The way the Bible speaks does not change, I said. It is like the papers of your speech that I have. They say the word one day to the next. The Bible says that Jesus came to life. It is God's banana stalk. And this keeps going. But I want to just say that, like, at the end of this chapter, these people, they say God is a mode alone. Like they're able to, they totally understand because of these, like, God used these legends. Like he was working in their culture. He was telling them the story of an ant. You know, like you gotta believe that, like, God is amazing. He's working in the middle. Nobody is with these people. It's their culture. God is touching their culture. And then God brings a missionary to their culture, and he just opens their eyes to what the real meaning is. You know, I read a lot there, and I hope you got a little of it. But that's exactly what I couldn't not read it. This is when God works way before we ever get anywhere. I'd like to read some verses just to go with what our subject is. This is God's character. Jeremiah 17:10. I, the Lord, search the heart and test the mind to give every man, according to his ways, according to the fruit of his deeds. He is searching every man's heart. Can we believe that? Is he just in the church? Is he just in, me? He is everywhere. He is everywhere in every place. He is in the places of Baltimore that we might never want to see, that we don't want to acknowledge. He's in the rich society. He's in the poor society. He is searching every man's heart, and he is giving each person an opportunity to say for 1 second, God, are you there? Just for 1 second. He's at the edge of his seat. Deuteronomy 31:8. It is the Lord who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed. And then 2 Chronicles 16:9. This is a great one. For the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth, to give strong support to those whose heart is blameless towards him. And we know that in the Bible, what is a blameless person? It's somebody who has faith. It's somebody who has just said, God, I need you. I need you. It's that faith that makes the person blameless. It's the faith that removes the sinful blemish from their life. Just thinking about these mode alone people, they are forever impacted by the work of the gospel and how it revealed what was their real culture, it revealed the meaning of their legends. Like they're forever, because they had faith when they heard the answer. They had faith and they believed it, and their lives were changed. And if you read, for me, reading is hard. It really is hard. Some people, they love reading. For me, it's very hard. But I read this book mostly because it was homework. But I read this book cover to cover, and it is amazing. Like these people, their lives were changed. They went out and they were missionaries to other tribes. Not because anybody told them to, but they felt that God was leading them to other tribes. And those tribes had different languages, but they went there anyway. And they went to another tribe, and guess what? They spoke the other tribe's language, and they didn't even know the language. They were given the gift of another tongue because their faith. And God did amazing work in another tribe, and he did it again and again and again, and he's still working with the Modeloan people. They're Christians today. That's incredible. I'm thinking about the summer harvest. So much is happening this summer. Why not? Why can't we go out? Why can't we trust that God has got somebody special waiting for you somewhere? That he's working on somebody's heart right now, and he wants somebody to be a part of that work. He wants one of us to buy a plane ticket and to fly out. He doesn't need us, but he wants us to be a part of this grand plan that he has so that we can explain the gospel to somebody in their culture. That they might actually ask you, what does this mean? My culture says this. What does this mean? And then suddenly you, because of what we this amazing church and the gospel, we're able to sit down with somebody and be a part of this work that God's already working on. And it's humbling. It's humbling. This summer, let's make an effort to find a summer harvest. Let's make an effort. For me, we're planning on going to Ecuador. There's a group of believers in Quito, Ecuador that right now don't have a pastor, and they want to be encouraged. So we're going to go there, and there's 7 of us. Pastor Stan is going. Pastor Stan Collins is going to go. Pastor Hadley is going to come, and then we're going to go to Guayaquil. There's a church there. That's where Emmanuel's comes from, and he's in Bible college here. We're going to say hello to them. But I want to believe that there's somebody in Ecuador that God has called us to be talked to. I want to believe it. I can believe it. I know his character. I can believe it. What about Pastor Ronaldo, 30 days somewhere? Can we jump onto that? There's somebody maybe in Pittsburgh waiting for you. Come on, Pastor Matt. Pittsburgh. And then many more. I know that there's California is another one, right? There's some people going to San Diego. Daniel Flores. Do you know Daniel Flores? Because you should know Daniel Flores. He is somebody to get alongside because he's an encourager. He's an encourager. Let's go out and do summer harvest. Anu says he knows Nupu Nukunen. Cody Walker. Let's go. Let's get an Uber. Come on. How much is an Uber to California? All right, I want to just mention one. Let's talk about a couple of biblical examples really quick. Acts 8:26. Pastor Stan mentioned this in our team meeting. This is a great example of what we're talking about. Again, that's chapter 8 of Acts, verse 26. I'm in Romans. That's not going to do it. Here we go. Now an angel of the Lord said to Philip, "Rise and go towards the south to the road that goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza. This is a desert place." And he rose and went, and there was an Ethiopian, a eunuch, a court official of Candace, queen of the Ethiopians, who was in charge of all her treasure. He had come to Jerusalem to worship and was returning seated in his chariot, and he was reading the prophet Isaiah. And the Spirit said to Philip, "Go over and join this chariot." So Philip ran to him and heard him reading Isaiah the prophet and asked, "Do you understand what you are reading?" And he said, "How can I unless somebody guides me?" And he invited Philip to come and sit with him. And that is a real example of what we're talking about. I mean, what a great example. Lord, can't that happen in my life? We can believe it. We can ask God that somebody is sitting on a park bench and they're reading Isaiah. And you sit down next to them, and they'll be like, "How can I understand it unless somebody teaches me?" It's real. This is how our ministry is. It's how we have churches in India. It's how we have churches in Europe. This is exactly what happens. This is exciting. We have examples. We don't have to turn there, but I can think of what about Paul? Paul, God is working in Paul's life personally. He meets him on the road. He blinds him. And then who does he send? Right? Ananias. He sends Ananias and he says, look, I got somebody waiting for you. I've been working him already. You just have to show up. So he shows up. And now we have Paul. And now we have Romans. And we have all of these books in the Bible because somebody just showed up. We show up. And God is working. And we get to somehow in his glory be a part of that. And then my last example that I'd like to, just like Paul, Acts 16, verse 13 to 15. That's Paul and Lydia. Paul comes to Philippi, and he goes to where people are praying, and guess who's there? Lydia. And what an amazing part of the church. And guess who? It says she believes in God, and she's waiting for somebody to teach her. And they have a Bible study. But he went to a place. There was somebody praying for somebody to come and teach them, and Paul's the person, and they have a Bible study. I love just as a great outline of. This is the last verse. This is it. If you remember, just write this down. Job 38, 25 to 27. And this is the outline of what I wanted to say today. The whole thing. Here it is. Who has cleft? This is God speaking. And he's asking Job. He's showing Job his character. And here it is. Who has cleft a channel for the torrents of rain and a way for the thunderbolt? This is it. To bring rain on a land where no man is, on the desert in which there is no man, to satisfy the waste and desolate land, and to make the ground sprout with grass. There is a place in this world where no man has gone. No Christian has gone. But there is somebody there. There's somebody there that is unsaved, that God is watering their soul. That's how I want to look at this verse. In the context, he's showing what he's actually doing, that he's out there in the desert and he's watering plants. But he does this with our lives too. He does this with our lives. There is a wilderness out there, and he has called people to go out and to see that he's actually watering people's lives and waiting for the moment that you can harvest. That the missionaries go, the field is white. He is watering fields in the desert. He's watering these fields because of his gracious character. He is watering people's souls so that when the gospel comes, they are ready. They are ready. The plant is already done. No need to do anything other than present the gospel to these people. That's it. That's it. I don't have to give them money. I don't have to give them some kind of 10 steps to happiness. I don't have to give them anything other than Christ has saved us from our sin. He has covered us. He wants us to live in Him and to grow in Him. And then to go out and tell other people about it. And that's it. And that's what we're going to do this summer harvest. Job. Thanks, Job, for writing that down about God's character. That He is watering the plant. That I wouldn't, because I can't water plants when they're right in front of me. In my house, they'll just die. It will be weeks. But apparently he's watering that plant. Right? So that's just something encouraging for us. I hope that message comes clear. Wow, what a great thing that we have going. It's the best thing on the planet. It's the best thing on the planet. Maybe we need to focus more on our summer and today and our summer, and think about, wow, this could be a great opportunity amidst all this chaos. Amidst chaos, we can go out and harvest what God has planted and watered. So, amen.